With the My Hero Academia story coming to a close, I started thinking, what would happen if instead of watching Deku complete the series with One for All, we instead saw an alternate universe where Izuku was born with a quirk of All for One, not only with the ability, but as the successor of the Demon Lord himself. And the more I started thinking about that, the more ideas started flooding my brain. So I ended up hitting up my buddy Puffin, and safe to say, I can guarantee you we cooked on this one. So if you guys go on to enjoy this video, not only leave a like and subscribe and do the usual stuff, but go check out his page, seeing as he just dropped a movie to what if Deku was a Saiyan. So go check that out, but with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
In this timeline, Deku was born on the same day to the same Inko, but this time he's born in a different hospital. Instead of just being a random one in the city, Deku was born under the comforting hands of Dr. Ujiko in Jaku General Hospital. His birth wasn't one surrounded with nurses and doctors, it was one surrounded with wires and test tubes, flashing screens and files upon files of stolen quirk information. Inko gives birth in this dark room, every scream echoing and bouncing around. Tubes hooked into every part of her body for maximum success, pumping her full of medicine, painkillers, and heart stabilizers. The doctor watched over her charts constantly, increasing every chance he could get. This child had to survive, for he held the genes of the single strongest man alive, all for one. As Deku was born, he emanated a red light, his quirk activating the second he comes out. The faint light hums in the dark, lighting up across the doctor's face. It's incredible. Right away, he takes some of Deku's blood, rushing to do some tests, finding out Deku's quirk matched. He too had the quirk All for One. Finding this out, he calls All for One immediately, giving him the news. All for One, who is currently in America searching for a young star in stripe, begins smiling. Finally. Dr. Ujiko in the hospital room goes back over to Deku. He looked at him as if he was a god. Seeing Inko completely passed out from the strain of childbirth next to him, he completely ignores her, looking past her and staring instead. The doctor staring at his freshly awakened eyes, seeing blank, soulless eyes staring back. Right away he would cut the cord before picking Deku up, leaving Inko completely unattended. As Deku was picked up, he begins crying, feeling the touch of another human would activate something. An almost primal hunger taking over his mind in that instant. The doctor sees the child glowing a little bit brighter, his crying stopping as he began to steal, fulfilling his hunger. Just by picking Deku up, he feels this essence being sucked away from him, like his soul itself was being taken from his body. Feeling this, he puts baby Deku down quickly. What the hell was that? He starts breathing heavy, looking around him in horror. He felt a presence when he picked up Deku, one that reminded him eerily of All for One. As he feels this, he stares and now smiling Deku down, starting to hyperventilate. He feels his heart beating hard in his chest before slowing down, falling to one knee and looking at his hands. Like the raging cannon, Dr. Ujiko almost begins decaying, his body aging up increasingly quickly, his almost 150-year-old body barely keeping itself alive after Deku stole his quirk. He looks around himself, feeling like he was about to die, before someone comes into the room, clapping and smiling a wicked smile. Like father, like son, Midoriya. Yes, you will do nicely. All for One walks into the secret hospital room they had set up, staring at Inko and Deku before looking at an almost dead Ujiko on the floor. He stared coldly and blankly at him, watching as he crawled weakly towards him. Help me, master. All for One, seeing this, smiles, looking back at Deku, who looked as happy as could be. I didn't know you were one for giving gifts, Ujiko, though it's a fitting first quirk of the future king of this world. He stares him down, tossing up on if he should kill him where he stands, before he smiles. No, this will be better. He holds his hand out and gives Ujiko a copy of his own quirk. Ujiko's age reverting back to a 60-year-old self, heart beating normally as he begins coming back to life. Thank you, sire. That was too close for comfort. It seems the child only needs physical contact to steal a quirk. All I did was touch him and it was gone. All for One, hearing this, smiles. So it's even better than my own. Seems your doomsday theory was true, Doctor. That's better news. From here on, we shall mold this kid into the perfect successor. The perfect vessel. The doctor would look back at him before staring down a still passed out and bleeding Inko. And what about her? What should we do with her? All for One, now holding Deku, stares at her. She's served her purpose. Dispose of her. Do whatever you want. The doctor, hearing this, grows a wicked smile. Whatever I want, huh? His face twists, thinking of all the things he could do before one comes across his head. She will be the base of my greatest Nomu yet. From there, Deku will grow up, going from a baby to a toddler and eventually growing into a little kid. going up to be the age of 4. As soon as he begins getting consciousness, All For One would begin his manipulation. Getting Deku from a young age used to the feeling of killing, the feeling of stealing, and the feeling of betrayal. His first ever murder happening at the ripe age of 4. All For One deciding to take him on a little excursion with him one night. He takes him with a portal quirk to another hospital, one that he's ran for a while in the background that looked after sick and injured orphans. Deku would look around the place. It seemed so familiar to him. His brain's still developing, you know. He walks with All For One, staring at the sleeping kids around him. All the lights turned off, dead, silent. Him and All For One would continue forward, All For One blending in with the dark, dimly lit room. This would be until they stop, All For One holding Deku's arm as they approach a bed in the middle of the room. One with blue and white sheets, one that was currently occupied by a recovering Darby after he burnt the shit out of himself. All For One smiles, seeing the boy, burn scars stapled together, barely breathing and weak pulse. In his mind, he was a lost cause, and due to that, he would be power for his child instead. He would lift up Deku, putting him on Darby's bed and sitting him right next to him. Something in Deku's mind knew Darby had a strong quirk, that same hunger from when he was an infant rising back up again. All For One watching as Deku begins glowing slightly, his eyes reverting to blank, soulless eyes, everything in trance with one thing. Darby's quirk. He'd begin walking over to him slowly, walking from his feet to his head, staring down on him. Almost off instinct, Deku would stretch his hand out, not even knowing what he was doing until it was already done, stealing Darby's quirk and killing him in the process. You gotta remember, he was like hanging on by a string already, so yeah, he's cooked. This would mark the first quirk stolen and the first murder Deku would commit. Deku now having a life extension quirk along with Darby's cremation. Now knowing how strong Deku was, he would have him hanging around the higher tier members of the league, hanging around about a 10-year-old Shigaraki, the Doctor, and a newly formed Korigiri. Korigiri made out of Inko, not Shirakumo, though he did still get murked. For the next few years, All For One would mainly focus on building Deku up mentally. He knew Deku needed a strong willpower to take One For All eventually, so he started building him up, bringing him weak quirks for him to have, giving him Shirakumo's Cloud quirk for his 5th birthday along with a weak regeneration quirk. Deku would live his best life until about the age of 6. Around this time is when All For One would finally send Deku out on his first mission alone, knowing Deku needed to get stronger in order to be a worthy successor, finally deeming him strong enough to hold his own out there. Deku wouldn't be told to kill or to rob, he would be told to steal quirks. All For One letting him off the leash for a while to get his power up. As soon as he hears those words, Deku smiles. He'd never been allowed out of the compound alone before, so this was going to be a good opportunity for him. He walks out the hospital wearing a fake bandage on his arm and walking out completely undetected. He moves from the hospital, generating a cloud below him and flying up into the sky, using his quirk to blend into the sky above him. Doing this, he searches around, using a weak magnification quirk All For One gave him to look for any type of struggle, or just like any quirk use in general. Doing this, he would find a couple of street thugs about to hurt a girl with a barrier quirk below him. Seeing this, he smiles, that hunger from when he was a kid coming back, questions circling in his head. How does it activate? How strong is it? What other ways could I use it? All these questions only make him more hungry, an almost primal side coming out of him as Deku would begin flying down. He hides behind a street corner watching as it went down. He stared at the 3 thugs around her, one with a weak electricity quirk, one with a dust quirk, and another with a strength booster. Seeing this, he begins fawning over it. He thinks of the combinations he could do with it, walking around the corner without even knowing it, his body moving on its own. The 3 thugs hear him walking towards him, seeing an 8-year-old coming from around the corner. The one with the electric quirk pipes up, starting to spark off some in his hands. "Hey kid, what are you doing all the way around here? Get lost, this is none of your business." The one with the dust quirk laughing. "Yeah kid, scurry off." Deku though doesn't even hear him. He continues walking forward, looking at the lightning guy and muttering to himself. The dust guy gets creeped out by this. "Yo, back off, kid!" He sends his dust right at Deku, aiming to blind him and send him scurrying away. It instead completely stops in front of him, Deku staring him down. Steel like air, plus gale force times 2, plus clouds. The thugs watching as their air in front of him cracks, dust falling limp as a sudden gust of wind would hit them all. The guy with the dust quirk gets slammed down, him watching in horror as a huge cloud would appear above Deku's head, clumping up before sharpening into a knife. He begins crawling backwards. "No, please, I was only joking, kid, please." He can't even finish, Deku having sent out a tendril from his fingers to grab onto the man, piercing him through the liver and dragging his quirk out of him. What a disgusting man, and what a pathetic quirk. The one I'm looking for is you. He stares down the man with the electric powers, his cloud from above splitting off into 2. the sharp end flying right at him as the other one goes behind him. The man tries to send it as lightning, but the clouds catch it, rumbling like a thundercloud before lightning completely dissipates. Deku, seeing this, smiles. Perfect, yours will work nicely. The sharp end of the cloud gets closer to the man as the other splits off and traps him from behind, pushing him forwards like a saw trap. The man has his life flashing before his eyes, seeing his kids, his wife, and all of his childhood. His heart beats hard in his chest, his quirk about to go off into overdrive until Deku stabbed him right through the heart. His clouds hardening like steel, piercing him and killing him instantly. The clouds glow bright red, sucking his quirk from the man before it travels into Deku. He can feel the power increase, his hunger slowly subsiding as he stares the man in front of him down. I promise I'll use this in ways you never even thought of. Starting with this. He aims his arm out, staring at the man with the strength quirk along with the woman, both of them trapped in the alleyway and staring Deku down. The man starts clawing his way out of the cloud behind him, desperately trying to get out, as the woman from below begins screaming for help. Deku, hearing this, slams the cloud onto her mouth, silencing her before forcing the cloud into her lungs. The man watches as she tries to cough or even breathe in, completely unable to. The cloud once again glows red before the woman too drops dead. The man, seeing this, is extra afraid, every cell in his body screaming for him to get away. Because he was in a life and death situation, his quirk begins evolving, muscles shooting from the inside of his body to the outside, looking like a mini muscular, screaming in pain as his muscles rip from his body. Deku stares this down. Well, would you look at that? Guess there's more to quirks than I thought. Yes, keep going. The man scrambles to his feet once more, slamming his fist into the cloud and clawing away at it. Deku, seeing this, begins to laugh, almost having too much fun playing with his little playthings, until he hears something from about a street or two away. Someone talking to a hero. Deku hears this right away, locking in. His smile fades as he makes the cloud intangible. The man would fall through, his hands now stuck in the cloud as Deku would once again make it tangible. He stares him down. You should know how this works already. Don't try and fight it. The man screams, calling for anything, anyone, closing his eyes and even trying to pray before Deku comes from behind and snaps his neck, grabbing his quirk as he does so, watching him fall limp to the floor. The hero from about a street away hears this, rushing full speed around the corner only to find nothing. No trace of anything, no villain, no hero, no Deku, nothing. He stares around the place, confused as all hell, seeing another hero rearing the corner in front of him. They stare each other down, one speaking up. So, where'd they go? You heard that, right? The two of them meeting in the middle and talking it over as Deku would fly right over them. He goes back to his base of operations, walking through the door with 4 new quirks under his possession, feeling like he could take on the entire world. He gets to the hospital, walking down the hallway and staring at the state of the place before he looks at the doctor. The doctor stares back, chill going down his spine. Midoriya, how you been? I've missed you. Deku, hearing this, rolls his eyes. You know I can tell when you're lying, old man. Drop the act. I got some subjects for you. I did try to keep them alive, but no promises. Deku's cloud opens up, spilling out 4 bodies of the people that he just murked. They all fall limp in front of him, the doctor's face twisting into a smile. Aren't you so kind? I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Oh, great one. Deku, hearing this, gets his head filled even more, finding Kurogiri and getting teleported to go see his dad as well. As he does, he walks inside, seeing All For One tending to an injured Shigaraki. A Shigaraki who was tweaking on the floor, scratching away at his neck after just killing someone. All For One stares at Deku while tending to Shigaraki. My son, how did it go? Did you fulfill your hunger? Deku stares him down. Yeah, and I got some extra quirks too. He starts showing them off, blowing dust around while buffing himself up, summoning a cloud and making it strike to the floor with a thunderbolt. All For One, seeing this, smiles. Very good, but you still need more power. Remember, we're after All Might. Deku, hearing this, understands it, going out on more and more missions by the day. He would use Kurogiri whenever he wanted, teleporting around the globe at his will, stealing from those unfortunate enough to show their quirk in front of him. He would do this for years, going from age 6 to around age 8, kind of doing his own thing, but growing more and more hate towards a single person, Shigaraki. In Deku's eyes, he should have been the leader already. All For One knew his strength, and yet he still favoured Shigaraki over him. This royally pissed Deku off, who over time would begin to seethe, plotting and growing even stronger just to try and take his position. Around this time, Deku would also get more cocky, finding quirks that allowed him to hide his presence better, change his identity and even change his blood type. He would also start going for people with stronger and stronger quirks, going for heroes in the night time like Stain, finding and killing even some top 50 heroes. It's also around this age that All For One would run into his first and second hurdle, his biggest ones yet. Deku's schooling and his fight with All Might. Now, All For One didn't know the fight was going to happen, so as Deku was out one day, All For One would be caught by surprise and snuck by All Might and Nana Shimura. Their fight goes just how you would think. This time All For One was a little bit weaker though, not having as many quirks due to building Deku up so much, something that he kept hidden from the two of them. Though the outcome is still the same, All Might and All For One both get badly injured, and for the next couple of months the two of them would be out for the count. Deku coming home that day to find All For One having surgery done on him by the doctor, trying to fix his face but not being able to. All For One rages, cursing All Might out and swearing revenge on him before sensing Deku coming into the room. He calms down and turns to look at him, head still cut open from the fight. Deku stares at him blankly, not even phased, listening as All For One spoke. Midoriya, I'm not going to be as active anymore. I'll have to begin working from the shadows, and to be safe, I want you to as well. There's a little something I want you to do for me. Deku waits for the surgery to be done, meeting a now blind and completely flat-faced All For One as he explains his plans. He wanted Deku to work as a spy inside a UA for him, but to do that he must have had at least 3 years of schooling. Now normally he would have faked it, but all of his connections are laying low after his defeat. He thought long and hard about this and eventually decided on a plan. All For One showing him a school that he was going to be going to for the next 3 years. A completely inconspicuous little school nestled in a regular suburb, Aldera Junior High, the same school Bakugo and Deku went to in canon. Deku would be joining late into the junior year and would be going there for the next 3 years, being given strict instructions to not stand out, and to never get caught stealing or showing off multiple quirks. Deku listened to this, picking his Cloud quirk along with some extras he'd picked up to make one quirk with multiple abilities added to it. He would from there be sent off to finally complete his first day of school. As he does this, All For One plots, thinking long term, plotting with the doctor now that Deku was gone, to finally take his body for good, beginning their metamorphosis plan like in canon, along with mass producing Nomus to help with the eventual battle. Walking into the school, Deku would feel kinda off. He wasn't nervous, if anything he was wondering if he could control himself that much. Every quirk he saw around him was an opportunity to get stronger. He doesn't know if he could hold back if he saw a powerful one, which is exactly what happens. As he walks into the school he meets with a teacher, being brought around the school by a couple of faculty members before being dropped off to his class mid-class. The faculty opens the door, looking at the teacher at the front before scanning the room. Hello everyone, if you didn't know you were going to be having a new student in your class today. Isn't that so exciting? Some of the kids are a little bit excited, you know. Bakugo in the back already kinda pissed. Who's this loser? The teacher looks at him from the front. Hello, what's your name? Deku responding before the teacher would sit him down in the same spot as Canon. They would go over some introduction things until the lunch bell would ring. Now, the class, seeing the new kid, would immediately turn to him. Deku walking out to the playground as the others around him would follow. Everyone kinda judges him, staring him up and down. Deku staring around him with a quirk that allowed him to see 360 degrees. He sees some of Bakugo's goonies coming from behind, tapping him on the shoulder. Yo Midoriya, you got a quirk? Deku stares at them with blank eyes, seeing completely through them. He didn't even see them as human. Don't touch me, Phil. He stops himself, coughing before putting on a fake smile and doing the original Deku personality. Sorry, force of habit. Bakugo comes from around the corner. Yeah, nerd. You got a quirk or not? Speak up. Deku stares at him, his eyes twitching a little bit, wanting nothing more than to kill Bakugo where he stood. I have a Cloud quirk. It's pretty versatile. I was hoping on becoming a hero with it. Bakugo hearing this takes it as a challenge to his manlyhood. Become a hero? You saying you're better than me? No one's gonna be number one except for me. Learn your place, Cloudhead. The class kinda snickers a little bit, looking at Deku who was staring Bakugo down, completely emotionless. Cloudhead, you have 3 seconds to take that shit back before He once again catches himself, stopping and covering his mouth. Bakugo hearing this smiles. Before you what? Guess I gotta show you your place, huh? He sends a right hook at Deku who is still staring, looking at his fist as all of a sudden it bursts into flames and explodes. Deku getting rocked in the face and getting knocked to the floor. On the floor, Deku sees this, his eyes opening wide, almost salivating at the thought of taking Bakugo's quirk and killing him right where he stood. He thought back to All For One's words while staring around him. He couldn't blow his cover. He sighs, putting his hand up instead and forming a small cloud right where Bakugo was about to strike next. Keeping his quirk to about 10%, the clouds he sends out blocks Bakugo's punch, sending his arm shooting backwards like he punched a trampoline. What the hell? Well, I'll be. He really wasn't lying. Guess you're not as useless as I thought. Hell, you might already be above some of these B-listers. Deku hearing this smirks, hating Bakugo off the bat but completely agreeing with what he said. The fight is stopped by the teachers and Bakugo is sent up, Deku being questioned and acting like a little scared little weakling once more. Now, this dynamic would stay the same for about 3 years, Deku completing his school needs for UA while stockpiling quirks in the background. He would move a lot less than before, instead going for stronger quirks. In these 3 years he would steal a Surge quirk, much like Mandalay's from the forest training camp, being able to see others' quirks, collecting quirks like Pokemon, going around constantly changing his face, his height, everything, making sure to never leave a trace behind. After these 3 years, Deku would have a good understanding of the supposed hierarchy in the class. Bakugo thought he was a god amongst men, which Deku would always despised, plotting his downfall in secret. The others, complete nobodies. He didn't even want their quirks. If anything, he was disgusted at the mere thought of them trying to become heroes in the first place, knowing firsthand the power that was out there. In his mind, he pictured ants being trampled by elephants. All that being said, the final day rolls around, Deku going into class and putting on his everyday persona, a shell of himself. He walks into class looking at Bakugo with a nervous smile, sitting down at a desk before jotting down some notes in his book like canon. Just kind of minding his own business, chilling until the teacher would come in, doing the whole, "I know you want to be heroes" thing, you know that. He watches the teacher throw the sheets into the air, scanning the room and grinning as he watches those not confident enough scurry to pick them up. He's brought back to reality, seeing the classroom erupt into quirk usage. Deku getting a sick feeling in his stomach, pure disgust. He had a kind of overhaul type of hatred for people with weak quirks, not even seeing them as human anymore. The only one with any type of respect from him was Bakugo, who of course would pipe up next. "Don't lump me with these B-listers, teach. I'm the real deal." People around the class staring at him, starting to argue. Deku kinda used to it at this point. The teacher doing his whole, "Oh, you wanna go to UA thing?" before he would turn to Deku. "Wait, Deku, you wanna go to UA too? I mean, your quirk is pretty strong. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to get in." Deku hearing this immediately takes it as a form of disrespect, sitting completely still as he would use a telekinesis quirk to squeeze the teacher's liver inside of his body. Everyone turns to Deku, all about to ask him questions, until from the front the teacher drops to a knee, holding onto his side and coughing blood, people calling an ambulance and stuff, until the bell would ring. Deku, of course not caring in the slightest, would walk away, walking out the door and not looking back, never wanting to see it again. He would return back to the hospital, walking inside and throwing his bag down to the floor before zapping it with a huge bolt of electricity. So glad that's over with. Old man, I hope UA's not like this. I'm not going to be able to keep this shit up for much longer. The doctor's about to speak up until another voice comes over his own. "Remember, you're not there for the experience. You're there for the information. Don't get caught up in that little make-believe world of theirs." Deku hears this and nods. The next 10 months being given to him to train with his cloud quirk. Just trying to get it to his best ability, giving Deku time to search for more potent quirks he can stack on with it for an even bigger arsenal while still looking like one quirk. In this time, Deku would borderline max his cloud quirk out. The 10 months over quicker than you would expect. Deku finally about to take the UA entrance exam. He would walk through the gates of UA, staring up at them and rolling his eyes. How pretentious. Walking inside and looking around, he could feel the power of those around him, feeling strong quirks everywhere. He locked into a girl to his right, using his search quirk to see she had an anti-gravity quirk. His mind began spinning, thinking of ways he could use it. From there, he would sit the entrance exam before walking to the prac exam lecture site, seeing Present Mike from the front as he begins talking about the robots. Now, Deku's still his normal, Deku personality, you know, but he's not going to be muttering in the lectures because, you know, he's not like a nerd for real. So Ida doesn't call him out, and Bakugo keeps his mouth shut too. From there they would be split off, Deku being in the regular exam site with Ida and Uraraka. Looking around with analytical eyes, he would scan every single quirk around him. Engines, anti-gravity, naval laser, brainwashing. Brainwashing could be cool. He keeps looking around before doing a double take. Naval laser, that's familiar. He starts thinking back to when he was a kid, remembering back to when he was about 5 years old. He gets flashes of a rich family, a little blonde kid coming into All for One for help. A smile creeps over his face. "Well, I'll be, we got another trader here, do we?" He lowers his head a little bit, kind of snickering to himself, until he would hear a mechanism for the doors beginning to turn on, hearing robots in the distance booting up and beginning to move around. Feeling this, he lifts his head slightly, looking around the still ignorant crowd, all none the wiser. Hearing this, he starts walking to the front, trying to time it so when he got there, they would start opening. He ducks and weaves around some people, getting near the front until someone would come up behind him, grabbing onto his shoulder. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but she's clearly getting ready for the exam. You going over there is only going to distract her from doing her best." You know, being like a little white knight. Deku slowly turns to meet Ida, staring him blankly in the eyes before giving him a look up and down. First Bakugo, now this kid. He's about to use his telekinesis quirk to give Ida a nice day in the hospital for a random ruptured spleen until the gates begin to open. He smiles, saved by the bell, turning away and running off, using his telekinesis to tie his shoelaces together while he wasn't looking. As Deku runs off, he can hear Ida in the back eating straight dirt, cursing in the background. Deku would laugh a little bit before running through the main gate, People around him all splitting off, Deku staying in the middle of the pack until he saw an open alleyway with at least 15 points worth of robots. Seeing this, he turns down it, summoning a little cloud. He limited himself to about 20%, the small little cloud bunching up in front of him, blocking an attack from a 3-pointer before it disperses, forming around the 3-pointer and flying it up into the sky, dropping it from behind him as he keeps running. As he ran, the cloud would follow him, kinda acting like a Gaara's sand, protecting him from sneak attacks and coating all the robots around him. Now, crush! Deku's clouds begin getting denser and denser, forming around 2-pointers before crushing them and leaving them cooked on the floor. He continues running, seeing another 8 points left. It's around this time that someone would clock him using his quirk. Aizawa, seeing the white cloud following around him, seeing Deku using it to parry attacks, fly, and even shooting little lightning bolts. There's no way. He stands up, staring at the monitor. Nezu, what's that kid's quirk? It's exactly like... Nezu would speak up. I was thinking the same thing. His quirk's name is Cloud. He has a cloud that he can control the properties of, making it rain, thunder, and even allowing flight. Aizawa, hearing this, sits back down, head spinning at 1,000,000 miles. He thinks back to the day Shirakumo died, going right in the face before going on a little walk to get some water or something, maybe having a ciggy or something. Genuinely wouldn't surprise me. Deku in this time will continue on, catching himself going a little too far sometimes. He knows he's got to stay inconspicuous, focusing more on 1-pointers over anything. Deciding to stick around the big group of people to make it look like he was simply outsped to some robots, knowing his score of 19 points was probably already enough to get in already. He looks around himself using an X-ray quirk before rushing towards the direction of the most people, the main street. Getting onto it and seeing absolute pandemonium, seeing people breaking robots around every corner, the street littered with metal. Perfect. This is where I want to be. He would start running around, looking like he was kinda lost, using his cloud to fly around but finding no robots. He smiles a little bit, not even looking for the robots, going down alleyways deliberately because they had none, pretending he was lost, nervous, and desperate atop his cloud. In this time, he would instead scope out his competition, seeing people like Kirishima using his quirk to bash down some robots, Uraraka using hers to lift them up into the sky before dropping them onto the floor, before once again seeing Naval Laser popping up. He stares him down, seeing him crouch down, hiding the fact that he was hurt. So his quirk doesn't fit his body, huh? Guess that's what happens when you are born weak. He just keeps going around, going from 19 points to about 22 points in this time. Nothing crazy, he still had to look like he was doing something, so he did destroy a couple of 1-pointers. This is until the 0-pointer would finally be switched on. Nezu pressing that big ass red button, unchaining it and letting it roam free. Now Deku would hear this right away. He could hear every individual strap coming off of it, hearing and feeling every bit of tech beginning to switch on all at once as it begins moving forward. Deku, kinda curious, would fly towards it, keeping it about medium pace, about Eater speed, flying through the main street and turning to his right, seeing it coming marching down the road. A smile creeps onto his face, which he quickly drops, looking to his left and staring through a double-pane glass. He could see the teachers watching. Well, I'd better not do anything rash then. He starts to fly away before once again his super hearing would pick something up. Amongst the screaming and running of the students below him, he hears a voice, someone calling for help. He would turn back, looking around before locking in on it. It's Gravity Girl. He would go to turn away, but something inside him told him to move, telling him to save her. Almost every fibre of his being rejecting it, but he decided to go forward anyway. He turned back and rushed right down, speeding up slightly to about 30% speed, lowering himself right above the road and swerving between oncoming examinees. He'd rush towards the 0-pointer, in his head straight up worried. He didn't think this far. Why was he even saving a little ant like that anyway? It didn't make sense, but he knew it was reality. Thinking quick, Deku sends out a second cloud from the one he was riding on. Deku slows down right in front of the 0-pointer, sending an arm out and pumping clouds from it. The clouds sent forward grab onto Uraraka, flipping the rubble off and flying towards Deku. Deku sending some more clouds onto the floor to soften the impact of the 0-pointer, keeping its foot just up long enough for his cloud to get Uraraka out. He sighs a little bit, watching as the faculty turn the 0-pointer off immediately. Deku starting to shake his legs a little bit, trying to look tired and stuff before de-summoning his clouds and falling to one knee. The teachers look at him. Nezu impressed, but not really as impressed as in canon. He did save Uraraka, but he didn't risk himself that much, and it wasn't really that flashy either, so he would end up getting 20 rescue points, which might be an issue in the future with Shigaraki. Anyways, Deku would sit on his knee for a while, watching his recovery girl came out, about to heal everyone. He figures this was his time to go, hopping up and walking slowly out of the UA exit gate, completely dodging Aizawa and Present Mike, who were both dying to ask Deku questions. As he walked out, he listened, hearing people behind him talking, hearing people like Ida saying how much of a better student he was, and others talking about how strong he was. Deku smiles hearing all this. They have no idea walking out and running the hell out of UA before they tracked him down. He'd run far enough away that no one was in his sight before going invisible. A new quirk that I'm going to give him right now. Now invisible, he would jump up onto his cloud, flying up and going to the hospital with the others. As Deku would get into the compound, Shigaraki would be the one to meet him.
Oh hey hero, how was your first day? I heard in the grapevine that you saved someone today. Did it feel good?
Deku hearing this had a chill go down his spine, locking back in. I had to. The teachers were watching. What was I supposed to do? Just let her die? Shigaraki pipes up.
Yep. One less hero in my eyes. I would have turned away and never looked back.
Deku hearing this gets kinda angry, flaring some quirks off until he hears something. All for one, talking from the shadows. Calm yourself, Tomura. Deku was right. That was only a short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal. For now, at least we know that they trust Deku. We shall use this accordingly. Let's not be hasty. From there, they would have another 2 weeks off, the faculty making the hero messages with All Might in this time, before sending them all out. Deku in this time would go after one final big score before he started hero school. Knowing a pro hero he's wanted to off for a while now. A hero with a quirk he's wanted his entire life. He would sneak out about 3 nights into waiting for his UA acceptance letter, changing his hair color to black, blood type, and face completely to make sure there was no chance of being caught. Doing this, he would walk out the hospital, using his cloud to fly over to his agency, stalking it out before watching from above. He would use an X-ray quirk along with his search quirk to look for the quirk he was looking for, finding it after about 30 minutes of searching, a smile growing on his face. He would sit and stalk his prey that afternoon, stalking him from above, following his car from above and flying to his house. He sits and plots, thinking of ways to get around this hurdle. He knew one touch and it was over. He sits and waits until the man went to sleep, calling for Korigiri to teleport right on top of his cloud. They would both sit and watch, waiting until he fell asleep before moving in. They break into his house, teleporting right through the wall and meeting on the other side, staring the man down before popping a portal right below him. The man would fall in before the two jump in behind him. Night would turn into day, the scenery turning from bedroom to lush, flat flower fields. All the way on the other side of the globe. They land looking forward and seeing a shaken up but awake hero. He looks groggily at the two of them before stretching and locking in. Deku stares the man down, addressing him by quirk only. Foresight, I've been chasing you for a while now. Sir Night-Eye stares perplexed at the two of them. So you want my quirk for something? What, do you intend on torturing me or something? Trying to force my hand? Deku smirks hearing this. Force your hand? You think we need you to use your quirk? Night-Eye's confused before Deku would begin charging something up. He didn't have Foresight activated yet, so he was completely clueless as Deku begins muttering, his arm lighting bright. Cremation plus Gale Force winds plus radio waves plus quirk booster times 3. His arm glows a bright blue before burning white, shooting out a concentrated beam that completely melts everything in front of him. Night-Eye dodges barely to the left, his right arm being caught and completely melted off. He screams in pain, Deku using his clouds to shut him up before he starts walking him down. You know how long I've dreamed of this moment? I've been waiting so patiently. He goes to put his arm out, about to steal Night-Eye's quirk until Night-Eye spins, dodging Deku's hand and touching his face with his finger. Barely. Jumping backwards and staring him in the eye. With that, the two conditions were met. Deku seeing as Night-Eye begins to smile. Let's start looking forward, shall we? Deku knew he'd been done, but he still smiled. Night-Eye's quirk showing about 30 seconds into the future before everything turned black. He looks up. No, there's no way. You have a fire quirk. Deku smirks, activating his telekinesis quirk and crushing Night-Eye's throat. No, like I said, I don't need you. I need your quirk. He walks forwards again, starting to monologue. You know, when I first heard your quirk activation was kept top secret, I thought it was all over with. There was zero way you were going to make it public information. And I couldn't have an inside man. You're way too sheltered. So the only way left was to see it firsthand. You have to touch someone's face and stare them in the eyes for it to activate, don't you? Night-Eye's heart shudders. Deku smiling. I can see you worrying. That means I'm right. Well, you had a good run, Night-Eye. But I think I'll use that quirk better than you ever did. He holds his hand out, grabbing Night-Eye in the face, dragging his quirk out in an instant. As Deku's hand touches his face, he had a revelation. He thought back to the day he met Mirio, how he's trained and how he knows he's going to be number one. In his final moments, he would only be thinking about Mirio. Smile on his face before Deku crushes his head clean, stealing the quirk Foresight and leaving Night-Eye dead in a far away country. Now, this is where I'm going to be ending it. Before I hand the mic off, let me go over the quirks that I've given him so far because there's quite a lot. He's got Clouds, a quirk that lets him live twice as long, Invisibility, a zoom in quirk, Super Senses and Hearing, Thunder, Dust, Strength, Radio Waves, X-Ray, a Search quirk, Quirk boosters, Gale Force winds, Darby's cremation, telekinesis, and now Night Eye's future sight. That being said, here's where I'm going to leave it off. I know it was a bit of a yapathon, but I hope you liked it either way. From here, the GOAT's taking over, finishing the story and making it peak. I hope you like how I've left it off. I hope you like how I've built everything up. And if you did, drop a like and drop a sub to both me and Xehther. That being said, I'm going to pass the mic off to the GOAT on the other side of the world. Catch ya.
Kurogiri, why don't you be a dear and wrap this body for me? I've got a gift for the doctor. As a wicked smile would appear on his face. It's here that after Kurogiri would nod going, yes, master, that the two would suddenly warp gate to another location. Izuku now standing before his father, bowing down slightly before telling him that he's done something magnificent. And what would that be, Izuku? All for one would reply, Izuku simply looking towards his father and smirking, telling that he took the quirk of the previous sidekick of All Might. All for one hearing that would have a devilish grin appear on his face, smiling as Izuku would exit the room, and All for one's true feelings would come to the surface. Kurogiri, yes master, Kurogiri would reply, keep a close eye on the boy, and make sure you report any unusual behavior to me. Kurogiri nodding, saying yes master. As we would then jump cut to the very next day, Izuku opening the door to his classroom, meeting the gaze of Bakugo, who would stare daggers at the boy. Izuku remembering the confrontation they had 2 days ago, as we would end up flashing back in time, getting a glimpse of Izuku and Bakugo after their middle school principal would have congratulated them for being the 2 first students to have gotten into UA. After the principal would leave and the pictures would be taken, Bakugo would blast explosions in his hand, telling Deku not to think that they're in the same league. He may have been in the same school, but he's still just gonna be a busted D-lister, and not to forget it. Izuku just taking the humiliation, pretending to be weak little Izuku, all the while in his mind he'd be struggling so hard to hold the urge to just slaughter Bakugo where he stands. So many ways of killing him would flash through his mind. He could burn him to a crisp with cremation, he could suffocate him with his cloud quirk and lightning bolts, or he could simply crush each and every single one of his organs slowly and painfully. But it's at this point that the voice of his father telling him not to get involved with the antics of these people would ring through his mind. And as Izuku would remember why he's doing all of this, he would smile, being like, sorry, Kachan. Bakugo simply exiting the room, pissed off as ever, considering the fact that in his eyes, Izuku had just ruined his iconic childhood backstory, which was going to show him being the only one from a crappy school, graduating to UA, and then becoming the #1 hero. So as Izuku would stare at Bakugo's eyes, fainting to be the innocent weak Izuku, he would once again remember those emotions, and he would almost have to restrain himself from killing everyone now. However, it's at that moment that Uraraka arriving behind him would say, hey, it's you, Cloud Boy, right? Izuku turning around to see Uraraka and saying, oh, it's you. Hey, you're the girl that I saved in the entrance exam, aren't you? Uraraka replying, that's me. As Izuku would say, I'm glad you're okay. But as Izuku would begin talking, this is when Aizawa would interrupt him, signaling the students to get dressed and make their way outside, which would piss Izuku off, because not only had he cut him off for speaking, which is something that Izuku has killed people over, but to make things even worse, he hated his tone. But due to the mission, Izuku couldn't do anything. So making his way to the changing room, Izuku would start putting his outfit on before suddenly he would be shoulder checked by Kachan, who would warn Izuku not to embarrass them out there. Izuku simply thinking into his mind of all the ways that he was going to get him back for everything. Fainting his usual smile and then making his way outside, us watching as he would partake in the 50-meter dash, the grip strength test, standing long jump, repeated side steps, ball throw, push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups. And after everything would be said and done, Izuku would have ended up placing in the top 10, trying not to stand out too much but also not looking too weak. This being something that Aizawa would take note of, questioning Izuku in the middle of one of the exams and asking why he's not giving it his all. Izuku saying that this is the most he can manage right now. Aizawa telling him that he saw more from him from the entrance exam, but Izuku would tell him that performing something like that would leave him way too gassed to perform the rest of the events. And as Aizawa would hear that, he would nod, simply staring at Izuku and questioning what the true ranking of his abilities are. Sort of understanding that this test might not be too suited for Deku. But this is when Izuku would perform his best one, riding his cloud, clearing the sandbox completely as the day would end. Izuku looking up at the charts and registering what quirks he was going to be taking from his classmates when his little mission here was all said and done. Then staring at Aoyama, who he now knew to be a traitor at UA as well, Izuku looking towards Aoyama and signaling shush, just like All For One had done to them. This would terrify him because that same aura that All For One emanates would be emanating from Izuku. And one half of his face, the side that had white hair, was way too similar to what that man looked like, he would think. It's here that Aoyama would ask, "Are you?" as Izuku would give him an evil smirk. Aizawa walking up behind Izuku and then asking him if he would stay and chat. Izuku hearing this would immediately be on edge, wondering whether the school has actually already discovered his true identity. Izuku would follow behind Aizawa, ready to kill him at a moment's notice, and being aware of his surroundings. This is when entering a room, Aizawa would ask him a question. "Look kid, I'm gonna get straight to the point. The reason I called you over here is because I had a few questions surrounding your quirk." Izuku hearing that would slightly calm down a bit, hand untensing underneath the table, which he was ready to use to crush his heart at a moment, before Aizawa would tell him that his quirk is very similar to a friend that he lost long ago by the name of Shirakumo. Izuku hearing that name would tell him that he doesn't know who that is. Aizawa saying that that's a shame, asking what his mother and father's names are as well as quirks. Izuku, after telling the last names, Aizawa would say, "Then I guess you truly don't have any relation. Quirks really are a strange thing. I'm sorry for holding you up after class. You can go." Izuku at hearing this would nod, bowing down and saying thank you before leaving. However, as Izuku would make his way towards the door, President Mike would come. "You know, Aizawa, that wasn't exactly the nicest thing to do. You didn't even let me ask the kid a couple of questions." Aizawa rolling his eyes and saying that since he has no relation to Shirakumo, there's no reason they should harp over this. But Mike would go on to say that he still wanted to talk to the kid. I mean, just because he doesn't have relation to him doesn't mean it wouldn't feel nice to talk to somebody who reminded him of his friend. Aizawa would roll his eyes once again as Mike would go on to ask Izuku at what age he manifested that incredible quirk. Izuku looking down and saying, "Oh, I got my weak quirk when I was..." President Mike cutting him off, going, "Weak? You have an incredible quirk, kid. It allows you to fly, it allows you to be an incredible rescue hero, and it even has some potency when it comes to the villain department. I saw that little Zero robot you took down," Mike would say. Izuku kind of being like, "Thanks." Face going red. Izuku just thinking in his mind that he's pretty glad he started watching those acting YouTube videos because he's holding it together quite well. This could actually be useful if he could get into the good graces of two UA teachers. Who knows how much information he could potentially siphon out of them. And this one in particular, President Mike, looked particularly gullible. So Izuku would answer all the questions, saying that his quirk is weak, acting the role of scared little unconfident kid, until eventually 30 minutes would pass, and after having a long felt conversation with Mike, Aizawa would cut the conversation short, telling him that the boy needs to get home. Mike apologizing for this and offering to give Izuku a ride. Izuku would say it's no problem at all, but Mike would insist, and now Izuku would be inside of the car of President Mike, him driving him to his fake home that All For One would have set up as his school address, as his two false parents, who were actually people being held under blackmail, would welcome him home. "Hi sweetie," the mom would say, looking a bit scared, Izuku giving her a glare of "don't mess this up," as the father would say, "Yeah, welcome home son, how was your first day at UA?" President Mike smiling before dropping him off, and Izuku telling them to cut it, that he's not here to kill them, and to next time not look so scared. So long as they continue being useful, there's no reason that this little agreement of theirs has to end short. And so, as both of them would bow, Izuku would say, "Kurigiri." Kurigiri appearing right next to him, Izuku then going on to tell him to warp gate him to his true room, then stopping short before saying, "Wait, actually, teleport me to the doctor." Appearing in the hospital, where Izuku would smile upon seeing the body of Night Eye having already been nomified. Izuku would smirk, asking how that was. Dr. Ujiko saying, "Oh, I had a blast, master. It was so kind of you to bring such an incredible test subject. He will do nicely." Izuku smirking as he would tell the doctor that he's glad, extending out his hand to shake the doctor's, with the doctor saying, I can't do that, young master. My hands are pretty dirty at the moment, as you can see. Izuku nodding and walking off, wondering why it was that the doctor didn't want to make direct contact. But the true reason was Night Eye's quirk. And so Izuku, being unaware of this, would simply walk around looking at the tubes filled with Nomus. Izuku asking the doctor if he did what he had asked. Dr. Ujiko smiling and saying, yes, I've made a copy of the master's quirk for you. It's gonna be quite elegant to see the son of the demon lord using this quirk. Izuku smiling as he would drain the power of it into his body, and now those same red beams of energy that would shoot out from All for One would be in Izuku's disposal. This is gonna work great, he would say, before barking to Kurogiri to warp gate him to his room. Kurogiri nodding before doing just that. After this, we would once again zoom into Izuku in the class, speaking to Uraraka, Ida asking him a few questions, when suddenly from the door would be heard the echoing voice of All Might. I am here, Izuku would hear, him feeling a sensation of utter hatred towards the hero that had injured his father and stopped their reign of terror from arriving even earlier. However, as All Might would enter the classroom, Izuku, like the rest of the others, would say, All Might, you're teaching us? All Might smiling as he would go on to say that he is, revealing not only that they're going to be participating in hand-to-hand combat today, but their UA costumes, going on to show everybody the little costumes that they would have sent to the Pro Hero Commission, them all getting suited up, and Izuku sort of having to admit to himself that, honestly, it felt a bit cool to be seen in this outfit, thinking to himself that this must be why the heroes do it. It felt nice to feel like a big shot. Before Uraraka would come out saying, whoa, that's your costume, Deku? You look great. Him looking towards her, seeing the skin-tight suit and thinking, wow, she, before, snapping out of it and going, huh? What, me? You really think so? Looking at Uraraka and saying, you look great too. I mean, not in a weird way, right? Uraraka chuckling and saying, oh, Deku, you're just saying that. As from here, we would then jump cut to all of them paying attention to All Might, who would go on to inform them how the 2v2 battles were going to be placed, with Izuku going to pick a name from the jar, selecting the name Rikido Sato. As Izuku would hold it out, All Might would say, Sato? To which the man would say, I'm here! Izuku immediately registering what the boy's quirk was, happy to have someone like him on his team, seeing as this could potentially make things easy for him. He doesn't have to stand out, and he can let his teammate do all the heavy lifting. It's here that Izuku would wait patiently for who his opponent is, honestly hoping that he would be placed off against Bakugo, because at least this way, even though he would fake losing, he could manage to get 4 or 5 real blows under that brat. But as Izuku would be thinking this is when Bakugo would pull out the card, stating that he was actually going to be going up against Todoroki's team. Izuku would get pissed, but would calm himself once he would remember he's not here to stand out. This is when Rikido Sato would approach Izuku going, hey, I'm Sato. Nice to meet ya. Izuku answering back, I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you too. Sato saying, so, you excited to participate in the first real thing at UA? Izuku saying, yeah, I guess you could say that, but you're gonna have to watch my back. I don't really have too much of an offensive quirk. It's kind of weak, really. Sato saying that that'll be no problem, that with his quirk, they'll get to the bomb no problem, as Izuku would look at his opponents in Minoru Mineta and Koji Koda. Izuku thinking that the situation couldn't have been more perfect, and as the test would begin, Izuku and Sato would rise up the rooms, checking every room until eventually at the 3rd or 4th floor, the 7th door that they would check, Izuku would spot the bomb, smiling going, this is it, as Sato would rush in going, alright, eating a little piece of cake, buffing up as he would take 2 steps into the room, and immediately, Mineta throwing his sticky balls from his head as he cries going, stay back! He would then catch Sato, who, unable to pick his foot up from the sticky balls, would leave Koji the perfect opportunity to use his bird friends to start bothering Sato, who, unwilling to hit them, would then fall to the ground, being completely captured in the grape juice's weak little attack. Izuku, seeing this, would feel the color practically drain from his face, as he would think to himself that now he's gonna have to put an A-class acting on full display, And riding his cloud, he would say, "Don't worry, Sato, I got this, I think," he would say, flying through the room, Mineta trying to throw his sticky balls at him, but him missing due to Izuku floating around. And with the birds all rushing to go get him, Izuku would say, "Sorry," as the birds would be covered in clouds, and Koda would say, "Bird friends, I need more." Suddenly, 8 birds would come flying, and as Izuku would be zipping around the room on his cloud, this is when Izuku would have a perfect idea. I can feint losing to win. And so, acting as though he was scared of the birds and didn't want to hurt anymore, he would start flailing around on his cloud, "Get off me, get off me," falling right on top of the bomb, where Izuku would smile, hearing the intercoms going, "Hero team wins!" After the school day would be over and Izuku would have gotten that victory, nobody none the wiser, Izuku would be getting his things ready, with President Mike saying, "So kid, I heard you use your little weak cloud quirk to win your event." As Izuku would say, "Yup, got pretty lucky." President Mike telling him that with a quirk like that, he should be acting way more confident. Izuku saying that he's sorry, but his environment didn't exactly raise him up to be a light of sunshine or anything. Mike telling him that he could give him some tips and tricks to use his quirk, saying that he knew of a guy who had some pretty cool uses of it. So Izuku accepting would say he has about 40 minutes to spare. Mike taking Izuku towards a training ground where he would begin showing Izuku a couple of moves. And when I say showing, I mean he was showing Izuku stuff he already knew how to do, but how to act as though he had no control over it. And once Izuku would master these new moves that he had taught him, Izuku would smile, saying that now, if Izuku used more of his quirk, he could simply pin the improvement on President Mike. He would smirk, as he would then go on to ask Mike when the next cool training exercise they're gonna have is. President Mike being excited and, kind of seeing Izuku ask Shirkumo would say, "You have no clue what's coming up, do you, kid? Pretty soon you guys are gonna be participating in the USJ. That's some pretty fun training if I do say so myself." Izuku hearing that going, "When?" As President Mike would say, "Well, I can't tell you the details, kid. It's more of a surprise, but when you do, trust me, it'll be a blast." Izuku smirking out of President Mike's point of view as he would wave goodbye to the hero and would begin his journey walking home. Izuku would act like a regular high school kid, making his way to his normal house before Kurogiri arriving would teleport him to All for One directly. It's here that Izuku would tell him he's got some good scoop on UA, telling him that the heroes are bound to have an event at the USJ very, very soon. All for One would smile, saying that he'll leave the rest to Aoyama to figure the dates out and to take care of the jamming, to simply keep playing the part of innocent little Izuku. Which Izuku smiling would then lead us to fading to a black screen as we would now once again see Izuku staring out the window of a bus, knowing that today marks the day where All Might will die. But this is when suddenly none other than Aizawa himself would appear, a clipboard in hand, as he would sit down in the bus driver's seat. Izuku confused because he thought All Might was supposed to be coming. He would say such, going, "Mr. Aizawa, isn't All Might going to be coming with us for this exercise?" Aizawa telling him that All Might was currently a bit busy doing some hero work. So for today, it's just going to be him, closing the doors to the bus before driving off. At this point, the students would have their conversation about who the strongest in the class is, all the while Izuku would be staring out the window, seething from his teeth at the knowledge that All Might won't even be present. But this is when one more thought would come to his head. This means Shigaraki will have failed. He would cackle at this thought internally as they eventually arrived to the USJ and would then meet the Pro Hero 13. Izuku being absolutely mesmerized by the power of such an incredible and imposing quirk. Izuku would say, 13, is there any way that you can show us how your quirk actually works? 13 smiling underneath her costume as she would say, of course I can, but I'm gonna need you all to stand back. It's here that opening one of her fingers, a black hole quirk would start sucking everything in. Izuku watching mesmerized, the quirk destroying everything to an anatomical level. This, however, is when Izuku, knowing that the villains would arrive, would see a purple warp gate appear in the center of the USJ, proclaiming the arrival of the villains, Shigaraki stepping out of the portal, with a gnomified Sir Nidai right next to him, different than the one that we see in the original, being far more slender than the one that All Might fights canonically, and working around speed and agility rather than brute strength. However, it still possesses the regenerative properties of the original Nomu, and with all of those quirk factors in tow, and being Nidai himself, Shigaraki was more than excited. However, As he would see that All Might was missing, Shigaraki would scratch at his throat going, "And just where's this little symbol of peace? I was just dying to have him ripped to shreds by Night Eye, but it appears his students will have to do." It's at this point that Kurigiri, outstretching portals, would teleport all of the students to their usual locations. Izuku falling into the water, a bunch of villains quickly swarming him, as clouds would be shot out of Izuku's hands and he would keep them at bay. This is when suddenly Izuku would feel a tongue wrap around his body as it would toss him into the air. As Izuku would land onto the boat, staring at Tsuyu who would have helped him, he would cough out going, "Thanks, Tsuyu, I appreciate that." Mineta being thrown onto the ground simultaneously as Izuku would question what they're gonna do about the villains. This is when they would begin devising a strategy to figure out a way to get out of here and defeat them. But as his classmates would be thinking about this, Izuku would just be thinking to himself that today he has two choices: play the part of a hero or reveal himself. And as Izuku would wonder which choice he would make, he would begin fantasizing about shooting his quirk straight through the heart of Tsuyu and crushing Mineta like a ball, until he would be interrupted by Tsu, who would say, "Izuku, what do you think about the strategy?" Izuku looking towards Tsuyu, who would simply think that he has a better idea, telling them as much before appearing at one of the edge of the boats and extending both hands out, clouds shooting out from the palms of his hands as it proceeds to literally cover the entirety of the area with water. Izuku acting shakily, saying he hasn't had to use that much in a while. Tsu catching him as he would say, "Thanks, Tsu." All the while the villains inside of the water would be like, What's this? It's completely preventing us from moving within the water." All of them completely ensnared by the clouds as Mineta would say, "Wait, Izuku, doesn't this mean that some of them, if they didn't have a quirk that allowed them to breathe underwater, they could die?" And Izuku, hearing that, having known that was the case, would smile internally, but outwardly would go, "Oh, I could have just killed them!" He would start freaking out, Tsu saying, "Well, the villains are here to attack us, and you didn't do it on purpose, so hopefully that won't be the case," Tsuyu would say. Izuku looking towards her, he would say, "I hope you're right," before then forming a little cloud that all of them could mount and flying towards the direction of the battle between Aizawa and the villains. As Izuku would watch, he would simply find himself being mesmerized by the capability of the hero's quirk, an ability that he and All For One alike have had their eyes on for years. Izuku would think that once he's done with this stupid mission at UA, he'll warp gate to Aizawa and rip the quirk out of his lifeless corpse, as punishment for every time that he spoke down on him, or every time that he simply didn't like his tone. This, however, is when we would switch perspectives to Shigaraki, who scratching at his throat would go, "You said All Might would be here," not looking in any particular direction, as though to make it seem like he was speaking to a villain. However, Izuku, knowing exactly who he was referencing to, would stare at Shigaraki with the look of "I will kill you if you don't lower that tone," before out of nowhere, a defiant smirk appearing on Shigaraki's face, he would say, "Nomu, kill Aizawa for me." The Nomu lunging at Aizawa, him using his quirk to erase every ability. However, the Nomu grabbing him by the face, palming it like a ball, would slam him onto the ground, Aizawa's eyes shutting as the Nomu would prevent him from using his quirk on him and would start to punch him in the stomach repeatedly. Then, using both arms, would start crushing and twisting, mangling Aizawa's arms as he would start screaming out in pain. Seeing this display, Izuku acting the part of a hero, all the while the horrified Tsuyu and Mineta would cover their mouths, Izuku would say, "What? Don't kill him!" using his quirk in an act of defiance, with the Nomu simply ignoring him. This is when Shigaraki would have a devilish grin appear, knowing that if they're just acting, then he could take advantage of this, right? As he would order the Nomu to kill the brat. This is when the Nomu, looking up from Aizawa and letting him go completely unconscious from every injury he endured, would then rush towards the direction of Izuku, who would go on to create padding around himself with clouds, with the punch from the Nomu sending them flying backwards. Izuku, noting that Tsu and Mineta were completely shot out of the clouds via his design, would watch on as this defiant Nomu that dare strike at his own master would lunge its arm back, about to land a shattering blow on him. Izuku about to have to use his true powers to drain the quirks of the Nomu out, would then suddenly be saved by the arrival of All Might himself, who appearing between the Nomu and Izuku would catch the blows of the Nomu screeching, "All Might!" Izuku staring at the back of All Might, shocked that he was capable of catching those blows, since after all, the Nomu weren't weak. All the while All Might would begin locking in a power struggle, pushing forward, the Nomu pushing against him, as an air current would be formed and Izuku would be pushed backwards. Izuku would hold his hand over his eyes, pretending to be the weakling he's always been, going, "All Might, are you gonna be?" But All Might would simply smile, saying that he's got this, telling Izuku to get back, as the Nomu would rip one of its own arm off, regenerating it almost instantaneously before driving it directly into All Might's injured spot, stunning All Might at the fact that it seemingly knew exactly where to hit. And as All Might would look down, this is when the Nomu would screech, "I've missed you, All Might!" Our symbol of peace shocked as it attempts to dig out the Nomu's arm. However, completely unable to, All Might would start reeling from the pain, falling onto one knee as suddenly Katsuki Bakugo blasting forward would scream, "Die!" shooting a full power explosion toward the direction of the Nomu, stunning it before an ice glacier would form, trapping the Nomu inside, who would shatter it almost immediately, screeching out, screaming, "Get away!" as it lunges towards the direction of All Might once more, eager to kill him. This is when we would watch All Might and Night Eye's Nomu get into a locked battle, us watching as All Might would attempt to land blow after blow, but they would miss due to two factors. One, Sir Night Eye's Nomu-fied speed, and two, the fact that he has incredible perception. And what I mean by that is his predictability. Having used the quirk of prediction and future sight, this would have gave him an edge in terms of the Nomu-fied state that he's in. He barely has any memories of his previous life, but he knows one thing. He loved All Might, and he knew him better than anyone else. So as All Might would attempt to land blows, the Sir Night Eye Nomu would screech, "Isn't this fun?" All Might simply watching on in shock as an ice geyser would be sent flying towards the direction of the Nomu, but the Nomu would swing its arm, screeching, "Stay out of it!" Shigaraki cackling in the background as he would ask, "Are you finally beginning to put two and two together, Symbol? Huh? Are ya? Because if you still haven't, allow me to explain. That thing you're fighting is the Nomu-fied remastered version of your oh-so-dear friend Night Eye." All Might's eyes growing wide, realizing that they turned his friend into a monster. Rage would fill All Might's, sadness, regret, everything, the 9 yards, as All Might would push himself beyond his limits and start attempting to land more blows. This would lead both of them to be on equal footing, but All Might would know one thing: he's slowing down, all the while the Nomu, it completely isn't. This is when the Nomu would take over in the fight, and as Bakugo and Todoroki would attempt to interfere, a warp gate would appear, stopping each of them from doing anything. Bakugo busy handling Kurogiri, holding him in place, all the while we would see Todoroki having been flung across the battlefield, unconscious on the other side by one of the most powerful blows of the Nomu, pissed at its icicle creation having been sent towards it, interfering his incredible battle against the symbol of peace. And as Izuku would watch All Might struggle and begin to lose, and he would stare at Shigaraki, knowing just how much praises the boy would get if he was truly to have actually gone through with this, Izuku would smirk, creating cloud barrier around the Nomu, leaving nothing but its head out. All Might looking behind him before reeling its fist and screaming, "United States of Smash!" Sending a blow so powerful it would send the head of the Nomu flying out of the USJ, all the while All Might would stand there, the body of the Nomu going completely limp, Shigaraki staring at Izuku, scratching at his throat going, "Damn you, you worthless hero!" Lunging at the direction of All Might, eager to finish the job, knowing him to be weak, blood pooling out of All Might's stomach and him shakily standing upwards. This is when out of nowhere bullets would fly, hitting Shigaraki, who would realize that the heroes were here. It's too late. He would stare daggers at Izuku before being warp-gated away by Kurogiri, who would seemingly nod at his master. Izuku staring on as All Might would be in a weakened state, an idea creeping in his mind. he could finally use this opportunity. He could take the quirk his father's been after. And as Izuku would get closer and closer, eager to rip the quirk from All Might, this is when suddenly a cement wall would appear. And Izuku, knowing that if he was to pursue things further, he would be the prime suspect, he would stop, looking through the cement wall with an X-ray vision quirk, seeing the weak and feeble version of All Might, coughing out not only smoke, but blood. And as Izuku would stare at the weakened form of All Might, a wicked smile would appear on his face, him thinking, they've got him. Maybe not today, but they do. And he'll make sure that he slays All Might permanently. After this would take place, we would jump cut to Shigaraki landing on the floor of the bar, screeching out, "It was your damn son, Master! He got in the way just as the Nomu was gonna finish him!" All for one saying, "Calm yourself, Tomura. This is simply one of many attempts to kill him. Besides, it's not as though we haven't learned one thing. All Might has grown weaker." He would cackle, Shigaraki screeching, "Your damn son got in the way. I was finally gonna get rid of him." All for one replying, "Silence, Tomura. All in due time." As suddenly, Izuku, having arrived home after the very traumatizing quote-unquote experience, Izuku would smirk, saying, "Kurigiri." Kurigiri warping him in front of his father. This is when Deku would smile, bowing down before him, telling him that he has incredible news. All for one saying that Shigaraki wasn't very pleased with him. Izuku saying that damn bastard snitched, didn't he? All for one saying that he simply informed them of what happened. All for one would question why he got in his way. Izuku telling him the full story, as All for one would nod. This is when he would ask Izuku what they've learned. Izuku telling him that All Might has gone way weaker than they have ever suspected. He saw his true form, a weak, sickly man with a pale imitation of a respiratory system. All for one would smirk, knowing that if All Might was truly regressing like he believed, it was only a matter of time before the once known symbol would croak. And so smiling and telling Izuku he's done a great job, he would dismiss him, Izuku standing back up and promising on his life that he would be the one to kill that weak oaf and not Shigaraki. Izuku saying as devilish thoughts would flood his mind. It's here that All for one would remind him why Shigaraki can't be touched, that he will serve as his next vessel. Izuku nodding, telling his father he understands, but asking him to please hurry, saying that he doesn't know how much longer he'd be able to handle the disrespect. All for one saying, "All in due time, boy. All in due time." As Izuku would bow and be warp-gated away, this is when we would zoom into All for one, who would cackle, knowing that his idiot son is none the wiser that he is going to be his true vessel. After this would happen, we would now jump cut back to Izuku in school after about a week or so would have passed, as we would see Izuku playing his role to perfection. This is when suddenly All Might would call upon Izuku, Todoroki entering the room, as Bakugo would stare at Todoroki and then at Izuku, all three of them having been called in by All Might, who would have told them pretty much the same thing, that they're each incredible heroes, and thanking them for helping him against the battle with the Nomu. Izuku, hearing a thanks from All Might, would play his role to perfection. All Might, I don't even need a thanks. I would have done it in a heartbeat. Plus, you saved me, remember? The Nomu was gonna kill me first, he would say. All Might smiling, saying that that's a pro's job. Izuku saying, exactly. Now, they're even, he would say, with a little bit of a slight chuckle. It's at this point that we would zoom into Izuku's thoughts, him simply thinking to himself how great it would be when he can finally kill this oaf, before then wondering, what will it be like? And using Sir Nida's quirk, all the while All Might would finish speaking, extending his hand out to thank Izuku with a handshake. As Izuku would shake the hand of All Might, he would read into his future. And this is where Izuku would see the truth, that All for one would die to his hands. However, not in the way that he thought, because in the final moments of All Might and all of the events leading up to this, he would hear the voice of All Might echoing, "Is there truly no lengths you won't go to in order to destroy this world, you demon! All for One cackling in the body of Izuku, saying that Izuku was nothing but a mere vessel from the beginning, and he served his purpose to strengthen the true Demon Lord. Tendrils shooting out from his hand as he would impale All Might's skull, killing him instantly. And as Izuku would hear that, realizing that the future doesn't play out how he believed, but in All for One's favor, anger would begin seething from the boy, him staring at All Might with an innocent smile, thanking him before walking back to class and being extremely on edge the entire day. Izuku would find himself quiet the whole time, the day ending and Izuku appearing in his room. It's there where Izuku would lay in his bed, finally able to drop the act where Izuku's rage would consume him, and knowing that if he was to show this publicly, All for One might catch on, Izuku would piece together the entire story, the reason that All for One always treated Shigaraki so well, the reason that All for One allowed no contact between Izuku and himself at all, and the reason that the doctor had refused to allow him to shake his hand. Izuku would recognize that from the day he stole the quirk of Night Eye, All for One had been scared of him finding the truth, and he took every countermeasure against it. That was why Kurogiri was constantly by his side. That was why Kurogiri was always there. Rage would fill Izuku as he would realize the truth of everything, when suddenly a smile would appear. Izuku knowing that if his father was to betray him, well, then he'd just have to betray his father. This is when we would jump back to Izuku being at UA, and as Izuku would sit there, he would have already planned what he was going to do to get back at his father. Step 1 was going to be getting the heroes on his side. Step 2 was going to be getting All Might in his corner. And step 3, well, that was his favorite part. We would see Izuku walking through the hallways as he would spot All Might, and using his super hearing quirk that he would have stolen from a random student at UA, Izuku would overhear the conversation All Might would be having with an upperclassman. Izuku hearing the final words, how All Might had told them that he is in consideration to become his successor. The boy replying back by saying that he won't let him down, but that even if he doesn't get the quirk, he's still glad he was ever in consideration, bowing down before waving towards a couple of his classmates that were walking towards his direction. It's here that Izuku would turn the corner, fake bumping into All Might, having known he would be there thanks to his X-ray quirk, as he would say, "All Might, I've been looking for you. I need to talk to you." All Might saying, "Young man, shouldn't you be in class?" To which Izuku would say, "Please, it's urgent." All Might telling him that they can just talk after class, that he has somewhere to be. But Izuku saying, "It's about All for One." As All Might would stop in his tracks, immediately taking Izuku to his office. This being the moment that Izuku would put on an A-grade acting performance, telling him a loaded story about how he was born quirkless. And in an effort of trying to change that to be a hero, he sought out the wrong kind of help. But it was too late. His family, he would break, voice cracking as Izuku would have tears shooting down his face. He would say that he's a damn villain. All Might hearing this is he would be shocked. Izuku telling him the story about how, in a moment of weakness, he caved. He accepted the offer of a villain who had promised power in exchange for a small favor. But Izuku never knew. He never knew what that favor was going to be. He never knew what it was going to entail. But the moment that he did it, he felt instant regret. He would tell All Might that he was the cause of the USJ, that he was the one who told the villains the fact that they were going to be having it there, that he was the one who jammed the signal, he's the one who nearly caused his death. All Might would stand up from his chair in shock as his fists would clench, and he would think internally, just how far are you willing to go, All for One? Before then hearing the rest of Izuku's story in utter silence, using the backstory of Aoyama to a T, and crying, making everything sound so believable. Once Izuku would finish talking, All Might would ask his first question. "Why are you telling me this?" Izuku would look down before meeting his gaze, looking back down, and through tears would say, "Because I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Because I can't keep going into that classroom laughing and acting as though I'm friends with the same people that I'm backstabbing every single day," Deku would say. All Might then asking, "Why did you save me?" Izuku saying that he's looked up to him since he was a kid. All his life, all he wanted to be was a hero. But because he was born quirkless, he had nothing. He was bullied, he was treated like garbage, and one day, he was asked by a man in a mask how he would like to receive a quirk. Saying that being none the wiser, he accepted, not knowing the consequences, that everything was fine. The man hadn't asked for a single favor. He thought he was scot-free, but just before he entered UA, the man finally reached out, and by the time he got home, his family was gone. All for One has them captive, he would say. For months, he's been having to deal with the fact that his family is in the possession of a villain, and if he doesn't do everything he says to a T, they'll die. He would say, tears pouring from his face as he would say, "Oh, what have I done?" He would cry again and again and again, and as All Might would stare down at this boy who was breaking in front of him at the cause of All for One, All Might would feel so much unyielding righteous fury that he would look at the boy, picking him up and telling him that he is the bravest hero he's ever met, saying that it's not his fault, and that thanks to Izuku telling them the truth, telling him the truth, now they have the upper hand. What was once used as a double agent could now function as a triple one, holding Izuku's shoulder, Izuku feeling comforted, wiping off some of the tears, as he would stare at All Might saying that he doesn't know if he can do it. One wrong move and his family would die, he would say. But if you can promise me that my family will come out safe, All Might, then I'll do it. I'll do everything you tell me. I'll tell you everything I know. All Might staring at the boy who now more determined than ever would answer his question. What did All for One do after you stopped my death? Izuku would confess that after that had happened, he sent him videos of his sister being beat on his behalf, telling him that if that happened again, she would be the first to go, followed by the rest. And as All Might would hear those words, he would nod, smiling at Izuku, promising that that will never happen. Izuku thanking All Might for understanding, telling him that he'll do whatever it takes to fight alongside them because he wants to be a hero and not be known as a villain. All Might smiling, patting his head as he would say, "You won't be. Thanks to you, the greatest villain this world has ever known will be taken down." And as Izuku would go into the chest of All Might crying, this is when Izuku would look up towards All Might, telling him that All for One is after his quirk. That's the thing that he wants most in this life. All Might saying that he knows that All for One has been after it for generations. Izuku would tell him that he knows why, explaining to All Might that when the quirk All for One and One for All merge, it will create a quirk so unbelievably powerful that nobody will be capable of stepping up to him, doomsday theory or not. And All Might hearing this would nod, as Izuku would bow down head to the ground, begging All Might to let him not only fight alongside him, but consider him worthy of being his successor. He would say that he knows he's asking for a lot, and that All Might probably sees him as nothing more than a villain. But Izuku would tell him that he wants to be able to fight neck and neck with the villain that did this to him. He wants to be able to save everyone with a smile, just like he did. And most of all, he wants to prove that weak little Izuku is more than that. All Might telling him that he has a lot to consider, not outright saying no. This would cause Izuku to smile slightly, as following this, Izuku would be questioned by the authorities, them using a truth or lie detector quirk to see whether Izuku was telling the truth in everything, and after All Might had confirmation via using a lie detector quirk which Izuku would pass by using a radio wave quirk that allowed him to emit frequencies in line with truths, this would lead the entirety of UA staff to place their hopes into Izuku, none the wiser of the fact that Izuku possesses more than one quirks. So with Izuku being trusted by everyone at UA including Nezu, Nezu would hold his hand out to Izuku, Izuku shaking it, Nezu saying that he will be most crucial in the effort of finally taking down the greatest villain of all. Present Mike walking over towards Izuku after everything was said and done, as he would ask Izuku one question, whether or not he knew if that quirk that he's in possession of actually and truly belonged to Shirakumo. Izuku would nod, saying that he doesn't know, but more than likely, it was. He would apologize for having never told them the truth, saying that had he done so, his family might have died, but Mike would say he knows, telling Izuku that he's glad. Izuku faking being shocked as Mike would go on to explain that he's glad that if anyone was going to inherit the quirk of Shirakumo, it was him, somebody with the true heart of a hero. Something that Mike truly and utterly believed from the bottom of his heart after the lie detector quirk would have asked him whether he truly wants to become a hero from the bottom of his heart, and Izuku would have yelled out, "With everything in me!" The test immediately blaring that he's not lying. Mike would smile as every doubt would have been eliminated from everyone's mind, and then we would see All Might going over towards Izuku, telling him that he'll make a decision after the sports festival, telling him to give it his all, as we would see Izuku smiling, thanking both of them and Nezu for allowing him to remain at his dream school, as he would leave continuing his act as weak little Izuku. And with the days passing and the quirk one for all in his mind, Izuku would know what he has to do. Put on a show during the sports festival. Not enough that All for One gets ticked off, but just enough that All Might could see even more potential within him. At this point, Izuku was saying all the right things, doing the right things. And in Izuku's mind, it was just a matter of time before he was given the quirk. One for all. We now flash forward to the day of the sports festival. Izuku looking around at his classmates, wondering what kind of performance he should put on. Does he use his cloud quirk to simply fly to the end and win? Or does he play it a little more safe? As Izuku would think things over, he would think that maybe it'd be in his best interest to show off just a bit. And so, preparing himself, the moment that the Stardust pistol would blow, Izuku, riding a cloud looking like Son Goku, would fly towards the direction of the finish line. Katsuki Bakugo on his tail, blaring explosions, screaming, "Damn Deku, I'm not gonna let you beat me!" All the while we have an icy hot boy behind him, using his ice quirk to try to close the gap. Izuku, recognizing that both of them were going to be getting in his way, would use his cloud quirk in an offensive and defensive way, using clouds to block the explosions from Bakugo and using them as well to send cloud variants flying towards the direction of Bakugo and Todoroki, causing them each to have to diverge their paths. This would lead Izuku's gap to grow larger and larger, and eventually the competition would stop. It would now be a race for second place between Bakugo and Todoroki, Izuku coming in first, with the cavalry battle being announced. Once said cavalry battle would begin, Izuku's team would consist of Ochako Uraraka, Mei Hatsume, and Tenya Ida. Since in this timeline, Izuku would have had a different relationship to Ida, where instead of viewing him as a rival or somebody he had to defeat, Ida viewed him as a partner of equal stats. So, Izuku using his cloud quirk to soar above it all, using it defensively while feinting being tired, Izuku would smile, using his cloud quirk to keep people away, Ida asking why in the world he would have asked him to be on his team if they were just gonna pass via his quirk. This is when Izuku would smile at him and say, "Because we're friends." As Ida, would kind of nod, and Uraraka, still in the process of using her zero gravity quirk to make everything easier for Izuku, all the while Mei Hatsume would use her propulsors to shoot them up into the air, so Izuku didn't have to use his cloud quirk as much. They would pass the cavalry battle section, keeping the 1,000,000 point headband, Bakugo completely unable to get past the cloud defensives. It was actually incredible for keeping him away, because the explosives didn't react the way that Bakugo would expect. They were clouds after all. That said, as Izuku's team would be called the winner and Present Mike would be gassing Izuku up, we would then see the students make their way towards the waiting area, where once there, Bakugo would enter the room kicking down a chair in front of Izuku, grabbing him by his collar and saying, "Don't you go getting ahead of yourself, Deku. Just because you won a little race in a cavalry battle doesn't mean you stand a chance in the 1v1s. Just make sure you get to the 3rd round at least, so I can personally crush you." Izuku reacting by placing both hands up, going, "Please Bakugo, not now." All the while Bakugo would say, "Freaking coward," as Izuku would have a smirk internally, thinking that very soon he'd get to tear that bastard limb from limb. But he just has to wait a little longer. It's here that Izuku, continuing to speak to his friends, would find himself in his first match, Izuku versus Momo Yaoyorozu. The moment the battle would start, Momo would create a spear and a shield, Izuku apologizing as he rides a cloud and flies above her, shooting little clouds towards the direction of Momo as he engulfs her in clouds so much so that she couldn't move. Izuku would think that was all there was to it. However, this is when Momo would create like, I don't know, like a leaf blower or something and start literally just like blowing everything away. You just hear the sound of as she escapes. Izuku, seeing this and recognizing that he couldn't have just won the other way, would shoot his hands out in front of him as cloud little particles start shooting forward and they push Momo Yaoyorozu completely out of the ring. As she feels herself falling down, a slight sadness would come over her, but Izuku, dismounting off and holding his hand out, would leave Momo to take it, as he would say that they were great and that he would love to face off against her again sometime. Momo would take her hand, and from here the crowd would cheer, people saying that that kid has the most heroic spirit of everybody. It's at this point that Izuku would find himself in the next battle, Izuku now facing off against Shinso Hitoshi. Izuku thinking to himself that it's probably within his best interest to allow him to win, seeing as not only will this allow him to stop drawing attention to him and people to think that, oh, he was just a goofball who got lucky, but it allows him the opportunity to play the role of weakling for everyone else. So when the match would start and Shinso would make a declaration of winning, Izuku would respond by saying no as he stops, Izuku smirking, recognizing what quirk he had even before the match had started, thanks to a quirk that had allowed Izuku to do just that. It's here that after Izuku would find himself losing, making his way towards the waiting area, Izuku would be approached by All Might, who would tell him that he did great out there. Izuku apologizing, saying that he would have done better, but had he done so, he would have drawn way too much attention to himself. All Might, however, sensing the mood have gone dim, would place his hand on his head, telling him that he did great and that they'll talk after everything is said and done. And as All Might walks off to witness the two final battles, Izuku would have a smirk grow on his face, him knowing that the time was approaching ever closer and the day that he would destroy the Demon Lord was now coming soon. The sports festival would come to a conclusion with Todoroki as the winner in this timeline, because thanks to Todoroki not being in his own head, because he won't be fighting against Izuku in this timeline, I just don't see a world in which Bakugo would be able to get up close to Todoroki and land his explosions. And even if he does, Todoroki would more than likely end up using his fire quirk, instinctively just trying to defend himself. So however you want to look at it, after that, Bakugo would probably say, "So, you finally use your fire quirk. Come at me, icy hot," which would lead to a final clash in which there's just no way that Todoroki wins. So with Todoroki being the winner and Bakugo having to be chained up thanks to him not accepting his defeat, we would then see All Might handing the medals to everybody as Izuku would watch in anticipation, just waiting for this day to be over. He can't wait. It's at this point that as Izuku would be watching from his own room, suddenly Kurogiri, warp gating inside of the building, would say, "Young Master Izuku, I've come to congratulate you on your fabulous accomplishment during the sports festival. It was interesting to see what you were capable of doing with the only quirk you're able to use at the moment." Izuku telling him that he appreciates that, but he doesn't have time for flattery, telling Kurogiri to warp gate away and that he will be bringing more vital information to the villains. It's at this point that Kurogiri would nod, fading away, Izuku watching as All Might would open the door and tell him that he would like to speak to him about his request. All Might would tell him that after seeing everything Izuku's done, how hard he's working, possessing the heart of a hero, the effort that he's going through and all the sacrifices that he's making in order to defeat All For One in the battle that he should have won years ago, he would say that he believes him to be the perfect successor, taking a hair strand off of himself and handing it to Izuku. He would tell him that he's excited to work with him. Izuku smiling, fake crying, as he would consume the hair strand. It's here that All Might would pat him on his back, telling him that they can talk things over tomorrow and explaining how the quirk would work, but warning him not to use it. He would tell him, "From the depths of your heart, scream out smash and clench your butt cheeks." Izuku hearing this would think that that's a bit strange, but knowing that that power was already assimilated with him, he couldn't care less. It's here that All Might would say one final thing before exiting the room, telling him to let All For One know that they're going to be holding the Force training camp arc on said date. Izuku would smile knowing that he has the full trust of everybody. They're all like puppets on a string to him. And soon, so will everyone else be. As All Might would exit the room, Izuku would make his way home, Kurogiri warp gating there, Izuku telling him to do him a favor. Kurogiri's misty appearance staring into Izuku's soul, wondering what this is, as Izuku would hold out his metal compartment and say, Die! All the while stealing every single quirk within the gnomified body of Kurogiri and piercing him with a quirk like tendrils that All For One uses. Kurogiri's metal sheet would fall to the ground as Izuku would laugh, knowing that with the power of All For One and One For All and Warp Gate, he's unstoppable. Izuku would stop to gloat for just a moment, thinking that everything was going so perfectly. So perfectly, in fact, that there might even be some survivors, if they're lucky. After this, Izuku would warp gate straight into the bar of villains, Shigaraki sitting there saying, "Finally, Kurogiri, you're back. I'm tired of you doing favors for that no good," before suddenly Izuku's hand would extend and he would say goodbye, before shooting a blast of cremation with an amplification quirk ×3 boosting it, burning Shigaraki to crisps. This all happening so fast, Shigaraki hadn't even had time to realize what had happened, but before he knew it, he was nothing but ash at the ground. The remaining villains in the bar looking terrified at Izuku, him telling them not to worry, that they're his pawns, and he takes care of his pawns. Warp gating straight to All For One, Izuku arriving in front of him, All For One clapping slowly and saying, "So, you finally figured it out, and you took Kurogiri's quirk." Izuku smirking in his face, telling him not to play innocent. He knew this would come sooner or later, what with him acting way more cautious after he unlocked Sir Night-Eye's quirk. All For One would cackle, telling him that he's a fool if he believes himself to be more than powerful than even he. Even in this weakened state, he could destroy him. But to make sure, he'll make sure he uses cautionary measures, as Nomus would begin to pour out of black sludgy portals, All For One cackling, telling him that he's been readying these for just the occasion. Izuku telling him that he's gonna need at least 50 times more Nomus if he thinks he's gonna stand up to a user of All For One and One For All. All For One hearing this would be shocked, not believing it, that is, until Izuku would reel his arm back and scream, "Smash!" At this, a massive blast of wind would recoil throughout the building, destroying it and sending multiple Nomus back, All For One looking up and questioning, "How did you steal the quirk? It's mine!" He would cackle, Izuku looking towards him and telling him that nothing will be his, and after today, everything he's worked so hard on will be given to him, the true successor. It's here that multiple Nomus would lunge towards the direction of Izuku, but Izuku would simply hold out his hand saying air cannon, plus impact recoil, plus multiplier, plus rivet, plus plasma cannon. A beam of energy would go flying towards 6 Nomus, decimating them, their brains being completely eliminated. Izuku walking forward towards All For One. All For One shooting black tendrils towards the direction of Izuku, Izuku smashing those things with his hand, being able to use 100% of One For All, seeing as his body was equipped with an incredible regeneration quirk. And it's in this moment that Izuku would smile. You're about to be hit from every direction. Multiple portals would appear out in front of Izuku as clouds would go flying and cover every single Nomu. It's at this point that Izuku would punch through both portals as suddenly his fist would then smash into the head of All For One like a literal knuckle sandwich. All For One's mask being shattered, head now disfigured, would then watch on as a hand would then grab at his face, Izuku standing meters away as every single quirk he had worked to attain for years would slowly slip out of him. It's at this point that Izuku would tell him he's now as helpless as a baby, before walking over towards his father and grabbing him by his hair. He would ask him what he intends to do now. All For One attempting to hit him with his fist, but Izuku using a telekinesis quirk would stop him, saying, One For All did more than just give me the incredible strength of All Might. It also enhanced the rest of my quirks tenfold, as he would start crushing the heart of All For One slowly, and as All For One would start coughing out blood from the disfigured face, Izuku would pause, saying, he actually has some more uses for him. Monologuing and telling him that all his life, he thought his only ambition was to become the world's greatest villain. But he would look at his father saying, what? maybe I'll just do the opposite of that, just to piss you off. Looking at his father and telling him that he's gonna be needing him for his closing act. All for one staring at his son, already knowing what he was gonna do. It's at this point that a portal would open, Izuku's arm grabbing at Dr. Ujiko and bringing him forth. Izuku draining the quirk, keeping the doctor alive as he would smile, telling him, "There's no more use for you, Doc. You can consider yourself terminated," he would say, the doctor fading away as he would literally turn to mush before All for One, yelling out, "Master, please save me." Izuku simply cackling in the face of All for One, telling him, "You really believed you were gonna steal my body, trick me, and use me as your pawn? Well, I got bad news for you, Dad. You're gonna be my freaking pawn. And there's not a thing you could do about it." Izuku dropping his nearly dead father on the ground before giving him a regeneration quirk to restore the strength of All for One, telling him that his final act will be losing to All Might. All for One knowing that there was nothing he could do at this. Izuku having the perfect plan. Using his father to play the role of a hero, enact the attack on the forest, defeat All for One, and play hero, all the while in the shadows, stealing whatever quirk he sees fit, and killing whoever is foolish enough to stand in his way. He would cackle as the screen would fade to black, and that, ladies and gentlemen, would mark the end of What If Deku had All for One, or What If Deku was All for One's son. I'm still not too sure what I'm going to name this one, but let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought about this. Let Puffin know what y'all thought about his part as well down below in the comments, and leave a like, seeing as your boy commissioned the thumbnail, took a long time to make it, and I've been working on this video for you guys for like a week. I genuinely loved making the story, so shout out to the person who commissioned this video today. But with no further ado, it has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.